There we go. Let's just wait a minute or so, and then I can get into introducing you.
Okay.
Awesome. So yeah, I see a couple of people have started to join. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm super excited to introduce Greg Marchand from Shop Pros. He'll be talking today about how you can scale your shop, strategies for growth and stability. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down in the Q&A section below, and then if we have time at the end, we'll be sure to cover them. Over to you, Greg.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dua. Good morning, everybody. I think it's morning where you are. I don't think you're quite close to lunchtime yet, but some of you getting close, and some of you are like, it's not even work time yet. So I appreciate everybody being here. The first thing I've got to say is I'm looking at this title and I'm going, wow, that's a cool title. Who wrote that? And then I realized, oh, yeah, that was me. Actually, it was my friend AI that wrote that. And the only thing that I would comment on is, have you ever had stability in an automotive repair environment? I don't know that I should have used the word stability, but we're definitely going to talk about growth, and we're definitely going to talk about some strategies here. So all of these things will lead to stability, but I think maybe we better define stability first. All right. So look, we have got a really short amount of time for a really hot topic, right? You're all here because you've got a really high awareness of what's going on in the industry, and you see shops getting consolidated, so the private equity is buying up all these shops, and maybe some of the local shop owners are buying up some other shops, and there's this opportunity to sell and this opportunity to buy, and it's super hot right now. In my coaching world, I've got two clients buying other shops right now, and it's a brave new world for some shop owners, but it is a growth strategy for other shop owners. So if you're thinking about either buying or selling, and I don't, I know we call this scaling, but it really, all of this is going to apply even if you want to be a buyer. If you want to sell your shop and move on, which I'm guessing most of you are not in that category right now. But all the principles are kind of the same, right? Your financial position really matters. Are you paying attention to it? How secure is it? Is it something that's flowing cash? Processes really matter, and operations matter. And really, those two bullet points right there, what that really means is, if you're going to be a buyer, or you're buyer of a shop, or you're going to be a seller of a shop, that shop had better be able to stand on its own. Because if your growth strategy is to buy another shop, you don't want one that can't stand on its own. You don't have that kind of time, because now you've got at least two, maybe three or more shops, right? And so finances matter, processes matter, operations matter. There's a whole lot of things that really matter, but really, this word right here, intentional, is what matters the most. That was the key word for a number of my coaching clients this year. When we went into January, I said, listen, in 2025, you've absolutely got to be intentional about a whole lot of things, because we cannot grow just willy-nilly. We cannot grow just by the seat of our pants. And look, I see people that try to, and it works for a minute, but it's not a strategy, folks. Okay. Now, when I think about scaling, there's a bunch of ways that we could scale, right? Uh, the first thing that comes to my mind, though, is that when a shop reaches out to a coach, right? Because that's my world, and I go and I look at the organization. My first question is, what's your exit strategy? We'll get to that in a second. But my second question is, how do you intend to fulfill that exit strategy? And if they tell me they want to grow, they want to own multiple shops, or they want a 10-bay shop and they only have two now, whatever it is, the next thing that I look at is, have they filled the shop that they have? Have they maximized what they're getting out of that shop? So look, folks, for some of you, Your growth strategy is let's get the most out of the shop that we have right now already. And I'll make a point in a minute that if you're not doing that, then I don't want you to go do anything else but that. There's no sense in trying to go get another shop. I've watched it happen and it doesn't go well. Maybe you're busting at the seams. Maybe you are maxed out in your existing shop, and so we need a bigger shop. Whether we renovate or buy a building, or maybe you want an empire, right? I mean, some of you are empire builders out there, and you want I don't know 2, 3, 5, 10 shops, 50 shops, 300 shops. I don't know what it is, but maybe that's you. And so there are different ways of scaling depending on how you define scale, right? But really everything we're going to talk about here in terms of strategies, it applies to every one of these. There are nuances to each one of these, but what I'm about to show you, a few things about what I'm going to show you first. What I'm about to show you applies to all of this. Secondly, and importantly, get something to write with. You're gonna want something to write with. Yes, this is being recorded. You can go check it out for the next 90 days, I think. But I had a choice here because we've got about 45, 50 minutes to deliver a lot of material on a really hot topic. And so I could either get really focused on something specific that may or may not apply to you, or I could say, you know what, we're gonna put a broad range of strategies and principles out there and let you pick and choose which ones you want to grab and then go explore further. And that's what I chose to do. So you're going to want to write a bunch of stuff down. So go find yourself a piece of paper and a pen and a pencil, and I'm going to keep talking. All right? Let's say you're going to fill the shop. Just real quick, what does that look like? Well, do you have empty bays? As in, do you have bays without a lift, without a hoist? Can we add more lifts? Can we add hoists? Keep this in mind. For every hoist you have, and every person that you employ to man that hoist, it's worth somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 in revenue a month to you. So don't ever, now I didn't put the math in here, I probably could have, but we could have made this an 8-hour thing too. Don't ever let a technician try to convince you that he or she is more productive with 2 bays. Please don't do that. When you do the math on that, even if, and this is super conservative. I mean, this is ridiculously conservative. Even if we figure that their productivity drops to 80% or even 75% because they have to put the wheels back on and push a car in and out, right, to work on it, you will make more money with all of your bays staffed than you will with half of your bays staffed. We're human. We have 2 hands, and most of us have 2 legs. We can only work on 1 vehicle at a time. So even if I have 2 bays and it makes me 110% productive, you will still make more money if my productivity drops to 80% because I only have 1 bay. So we want 1 person per lift always. And reach out to me if you want to do that math on your own. I'll help you with that, right? Do we need to add more technicians? Maybe you have hoists. Maybe I just hit you over the head with that last comment, and you're like, oh, you know what? I got 4 techs. I'm sorry, I got 4 bays and 2 techs, and you're telling me that my techs are not as productive or not going to make me as much money as if I had 4 technicians. And yeah, you're right. That is what I'm saying. I've also seen shops where we had to rearrange the shop because the original configuration of the lifts just cost so much productivity. So if you're looking at how do I fill my shop? How do I get more out of my shop? This is just hoists and people. We're going to talk about more strategies coming up. Now, making it bigger, maybe you want to buy a new shop to get more bays. Maybe you want to renovate your existing shop to get new bays. There are challenges with both of these things. And that's why I really, really want you to be maxed out in your production capacity first. That's coming up real quick before you even consider this, because this can be really painful, believe it or not. Maybe the best case is buying the building next door, quite honestly, and I've had some shops do that. So all different strategies to essentially add production to what you're doing. But we could also say, I'm an empire builder, Greg. I want to own multiple shops. And maybe it's going to be a shop just down the road, and I'm going to keep that name, and nobody's going to know I own both of them. Maybe it's a shop across town because I want to be an empire in my town, my village, or my city. Or maybe I've got a client right now. He's buying a shop 3 hours away from him, and he wants to build an empire in a region. All right. So you've got some choices, but before you make a choice, there are four things that are absolutely critical for you to consider before you do anything. Please don't do anything until you consider this. Number one is, what is your reason to scale? It's connected to your exit strategy, and we're going to break that down and talk about that next. And number two, do you know what your production capacity is? And are you fulfilling it where you are now? And can the new building, whether it's a second shop or a new building, can it fulfill your production capacity to meet your reasons for scaling? Those two are super important. But then after that comes the people piece. You've got to have the right personnel, and more importantly, the right personnel processes, the right management structure, the right management processes in place, documented, and functioning to make the organization stand on its own before you go too crazy. Now, even if you're just going to fill your shop, you want to max out your production capacity so that you can have more time at the lake, you still need to pay attention to these things. All right, these things are super, super important. That's why I put them in here. And then the last thing I want you to really pay attention to, that's related to these middle two bullet points here, is, can we actually scale our current structure? Do we have things in place that we can then duplicate at another shop, or we can go from a 4-bay shop to a 10-bay shop and actually grow things without complete total disruption? So these four things are critical considerations. Now, the first thing, and I'll admit, 15 minutes ago, I moved these slides around because that's just who I am. The first thing that I want you to think about is your reason to scale. I do believe, Simon Sinek years ago wrote a book and has a bunch of YouTube videos. Go find him, S-I-N-E-K, Simon, S-I-N-E-K. Go find his YouTube video regarding the book Start With Why. And he lays out that your why is ridiculously important. And I have always believed this. We're going to make a lot of decisions around business in our careers. And the one constant, the one mainstay has to be, why do I do what I do? For some of you, it's I do it for my family, I do it to provide for my family, I do it to provide a legacy for my family. For some of you, it's I do this to give back. I can tell you my why. I get out of bed every morning to help shops like yours grow so that you can reap the rewards of all the hard work that you've put in. I find my pleasure and my joy in doing that. Now, why do I do that? You might want to ask yourself why 5 times. Now, you can find something else out there I'll use in some of my classes called 7 levels deep, where you're asking why 7 times instead of 5 times. But the reality is, you want to ask yourself, why do I want to scale? And the answer is not enough. You then have to ask yourself, why do I want that? Whatever that thing is. And then, why do you do what you do? And some of these things get really, really super personal. I've done this in classes. People have literally broken down and begun crying because when you get deep enough, it gets really, really personal. And I want you connected to that really personal reason that you do what you do, because that is what is going to pull you through the pain of growth. We can talk about scaling, folks, and we can talk about growing, but I'm here to tell you, because I deal with it on a daily basis. I have conversations on a daily basis with shop owners just like you that are stressed, that are overwhelmed, that are trying to grow, trying to scale, buying second shops, buying a new shop, doubling the size of their shop. And I always remind them, this is what you told me the reason was for doing this. And it's like air getting let out of a balloon. They'll calm down immediately. And look, on the bad days, I have to remind myself of what my why is. So I want you to figure out first, before you decide to scale, before you decide to grow, before you decide to do anything we're going to talk about here, I want you to figure out what is your why. All right? Exit strategy to me should be maybe the biggest reason that you want to scale. Maybe you just have a dream. Maybe you've just always wanted to do something, or this is the fuel that fuels that dream. All right? For some, that shop is a cash machine that fuels your other dream. Okay, great. For some, it's an ego thing. So let me show you something. If it's an exit strategy, and I'm really big on doing this for exit strategy, then maybe I want you to own your own building. And why do I want you to own your own building? Because when you sell the shop, it's a real estate transaction as well as a business transaction. And I think that's important. Even if you want to buy a second shop and have an empire, I prefer you buy the real estate for the same reason. It's a real estate transaction plus a business transaction. It gives you more options as an exit strategy. Maybe you want to fill the shop you have or take over 2 more bays in your rental unit from your landlord so that you can bank more cash. Because your exit strategy is your bank account, your investments. Don't say investment right now. Your exit strategy is your bank account. All right? Or maybe you want a larger business entity to sell because you can perceive you're going to make more money on it. All right? That's an example of why you might consider scaling or growing for your exit strategy. Maybe you just want to. Maybe I know shop owners always wanted to build the dealership alternative. Okay, great. He's done it. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. And he's used every strategy here. Maybe you just fancy owning a whole bunch of shops. Maybe you are trying to build that legacy. Just maybe you think it's fun. That's okay too. What's not okay is don't scale for this reason. Absolutely do not scale for your own ego. This does not go well. I've seen it. I've seen shop owners buy multiple shops and go bankrupt because they knew somebody else that owned 4 shops and they thought they should do it. Don't do it for your own ego. Before you buy other shops, you have to understand this right here. Production capacity. This is your best friend. This is going to help you figure out, am I running at maximum? Should I go do something else? Or do I need to focus on my own house right here, right now? Know before you grow, right? Know what your production capacity is, and until you're maxed out, I don't want you doing anything. Max out what you have before you make that investment over there, before you put the money in the renovation, before you put the money in the parking lot, before you put the money into the other building. Max out your production capacity. What is that, Greg? Production capacity is a measure of how many billable hours you can produce with your existing facility. In our production world of an automotive repair shop, it is truly a production environment. Our physical facility, that is the number of lifts you have, will determine how many hours we can produce maximum. Now you might go, no, Greg, it's my technicians that determine it. No, it's not. Because eventually you could find 4 highly productive technicians and they're only going to be able to produce you so much revenue because they can't grow infinitely. And so your physical facility will ultimately determine how much you can actually produce. Yes, people make those numbers, and I get it. We'll talk about that in a second. So what is your production capacity? Take your number of lifts times the number of days you are open times 8 hours, and that would tell you how many billable hours, in theory, your facility can produce. Don't do number of technicians. Do number of lifts. All right? You can manipulate this formula a little bit, but think about it. If I have 4 lifts and I'm open 5 days a week and I get 8 hours a day out of all 4 of those lifts, then I'm going to end up with 160 billable hours at the end of the week. So that 160 billable hours is your production capacity. Now, if you're not producing 160 billable hours, maybe you're at 80% productivity. And so you can look at your current capacity and say, okay, my number of lifts, or you could substitute number of technicians here if you have lifts without technicians, but number of lifts times days open times the 8 hours times what your actual productivity is as a percentage. And so maybe I got 4 techs on 4 lifts and I'm open 5 days, and I'd like to think I could get 8 hours, but I'm not. I'm actually at 80% of those 8 hours. I'm only producing 128 billable hours. So if my production capacity is 160 billable hours, because that's what we sell, right? Yeah, I know you sell some parts, but you sell the labor and the parts get dragged along with it. So if my production capacity is 160 billable hours and I'm only producing 128 on average, why am I going to go buy another shop? Why would I do that? Why would I expand what I have? I am not getting as much out of my current system as I could be. Now, are you ever going to be at 100%? Are you ever going to be at that 160 hours? I've seen it. I won't say it's super common. We consider it kind of rare, maybe, but you should be above 80%. So number one, you've got to know what your production capacity is. Look at the difference in dollars between 100% and 80%. Between 160 billable hours at $125 an hour, whatever your rate is, you can plug your own in if you want. But if at $125 an hour, we produce 160 billable hours, that's $20,000 a week just in labor. Just in labor. Multiply that times 2 if you want the whole revenue, right? 1-to-1 parts to labor ratio. So we're producing $20,000 a week. But if we're at 80% of our productive capacity, we're only going to produce 128 billable hours a week. At the same $125 an hour, we are now $4,000 a week less. Now, I don't know about you, but by my math, 4,000 times just 50 weeks, I'll give you 2 weeks off. 4,000 times 50 weeks, that's what, $200,000? So why am I going to go make an investment in a building renovation or in another building or in a second shop if I still have $200,000 potential right where I am? Because all of that other stuff, yes, that's revenue potential generate. I get it. It can generate us revenue. But the reality here is it's going to cost you something to go do it. So if you're not close to 100%, let's get better first. And let's use some of these principles to do it. So if you need to grow your productive capacity or service capacity or billable hour capacity, however you want to call it, I don't care. Different organizations call it something different sometimes. I want you to, number one, calculate your actual capacity, what your theoretical maximum is. And then number two, I want you to calculate your actual, so use that production, the productive, what am I trying to say? Your production percentage, all right? And then, so you know what your number is. Whether it's 160 or 128, I don't care. I want you to get super consistent at producing that, because once you get consistent at a number, then you can jack the number up. To get consistent at it, you've got to get consistent with your schedule. So you've got to schedule that many billable hours every week consistently. How do I do that? I take the number of billable hours we're looking for over here. I take and divide it by my hours per repair order, and that tells me exactly how many cars a day I need to schedule. All right, more on that in a different class. And then once you know your capacity and you schedule for it, now you got to manage your people. Now, if you can do these three things alone, you're going to get closer to being able to grow and scale. All right, whether it's another shop or a bigger shop that you have right now. Really super important. Once you get a handle on that, and of course, this piece here is this piece. We've got to put some personnel practices in place. Because the numbers are great. That 160 billable hours a week is awesome, and the $40,000 with parts included a week is awesome. Because a 4-bay shop should be able to produce about $160,000 a month, guys. But people generate those numbers. All right, don't ever forget that. And I said to a manager this morning, I said, you got to remember, people are nuts. People will never do what you think they're going to do. And so the best we can do is recognize that people matter. Personnel matters. Whether we're going to scale or we're going to stay where we are and maximize what we have, people matter. And to get consistency out of people, you've got to have processes, preferably documented processes. You've got to have management best practices, and that includes employee reviews. There's a bunch of structure that you really have to put in place. And so you can see, I mean, we could go days on this subject, right? But think about this to start with. You've already been woken up a little bit and you go, yeah, you know what, Greg, I've got 4 bays, but I only got 3 technicians. So I gotta, if I'm gonna do that maximizing productive capacity thing, I've got to get another technician. Well, where are they gonna come from? They're hard to find. What if you need another service advisor? They're hard to find too. And they might be easier to find than technicians, but they're harder to grow, right? If you're gonna open another shop as your growth strategy, are you gonna keep those people? Do you want those people? Do they want to work for you? Who's going to manage that shop? People matter. And there's 5 focus areas that you need to focus on when it comes to people. Now, I could probably put 15 down here, but these 5 in my mind matter. Number 1, it's hiring and then pay plans, because if you hire right and you give them the right pay plan, they're going to be financially happy. They're going to help you grow and ultimately help you scale. And then number 3, you've got to improve communication, which is shop meetings, all right? And then if you add employee reviews to that along with training plans, you're going to have happy employees that are engaged with a great culture, and that becomes really scalable. So a few notes on this, because we're rapidly running out of time, right? My mantra, and I said this a year ago, if you were at Amplify a year ago and you attended my program, I think it was a talent pipeline we did. You will hear me always say this. If you were a coaching client, you'd probably hear me say this weekly. I will beat it through thick skulls because it matters. Always be hiring. Do not wait until you need somebody to go looking for somebody. Because statistically, if I wait until I need a new person, then I am counting on the fact that the perfect person for me to hire is wandering the earth looking for a job. Would you rather always have ads out, always be looking, and catching anybody who's wandering the earth looking for a job, so that even if you can't use them, you find a great person and you have their phone number? All right, that's really important. The other really important thing to think about is especially if you're gonna build your empire, you're gonna buy a bunch of shops, you have got to get better at interviewing. If you don't have much turnover right now because, hey, you know, our employees love us, we treat them well, it's great, then you probably suck at interviewing, quite honestly. And so shops that want to scale are going to need people. And you've got to know who's out there, and you've got to grow your interviewing skill. So please always be looking and always be interviewing. It's like marketing. All right? That's all I'm going to say about that, because we got to move on. Now, once you hire what you think is the right person, you need them to do a specific job. But you don't just need them to do specific tasks. And this came up yesterday on a coaching call. Gentleman will do the specific tasks, but he's out of there at the end of the day. He usually shows up on time, but in between, there's no growing the business. He's not very good at sales. He'll get in a rush. He won't put all the information on the repair order. It gets messy pretty quick. And so you need to connect the employee, their tasks, with their wallet, okay? And generally you can do that. I always use a pay plan system. We can do 4 hours on pay plans. I recognize that. I use base pay. This is for technicians and service advisors, by the way. I use base pay and an incentive. For service advisors, we pay them a base plus a % on the gross profit they write, plus a % on total shop revenue. Now, the idea there is they can grow their own paycheck by paying attention to your gross profit. And if they're getting paid on total revenue, that's my incentive to help you when you're off at lunch. Okay? And then technicians, I'll pay them a base pay plus an incentive on the billable hours that they produce. Now, I don't have a slide for this, so you just have to listen up. I create a spreadsheet with the formulas that I plug this stuff in. Here's why I do it. 2 reasons I do it. Number 1, I do it so that you, the owner, the manager, can run scenarios. And you can create a pay plan that if they just do what they're doing, they'll make the paycheck they have right now. But you can also show them a scenario, hey, the best week we had last year, the best month we had last year, put those numbers in, show them what they would be making on this pay plan. Those numbers make it real. That spreadsheet makes it real for them. The other reason I do it is so that you don't get yourself in any trouble. So an owner yesterday had run some scenarios in a spreadsheet, and then he threw this month's numbers in, and this month went up for him significantly so, and he's like, oh my word, this guy doesn't have to do anything different, and he makes a lot more money. I can't do it. Kept him out of trouble. Okay? So hire well, get good at interviewing, always be hiring, and then consider your pay plans. And then we've got to have communication. We've got to have communication. Every coaching client that I work with, it's mandatory that they have weekly meetings. These are short, 15 to 20 minutes. These are my 3 rules for short meetings. Short, 15 to 20 minutes. Have an agenda. Because if you don't have an agenda, it becomes a gripe session, or plug in whatever word you want to plug in. All right, so have an agenda. And then be consistent. It's got to be weekly. Some shops graduate to daily. And so they'll have 5-minute daily meetings. Call them huddles, call them whatever you want. I know a shop that's doing 2 meetings a day. Because if you do it consistently, folks, and I know y'all hate shop meetings, but some of you do them, and you know if you're consistent with it, they get shorter and shorter and shorter. Okay? So have shop meetings. Always be hiring. Consider your pay plans. Get them structured. More on that in a second. Have regular shop meetings for communication. And then if you plug in employee reviews to this, and employee reviews, not just views, employee reviews that include a training plan, you're going to create a culture that's going to allow your shop to stand on its own and be duplicated at your next shop. Super important. All right? So have yearly reviews. Now, I will tell you the current human resource philosophy is have quarterly reviews. I'm not going to push anybody to do that because sometimes yearly reviews are more than enough stress. But you're gonna have some paperwork. They're gonna fill out a self-evaluation. Those can be magic, actually. They really can be. Manager on her own yesterday calls me up and says, hey, I just had my 2 employees do these self-evaluations. Guess what came out of it? And I thought, wow, you know what? That's pretty cool. She did that on her own. And she got good information from it just with a self-evaluation. And then she'll do the formal evaluation where you're going to talk about the good and the not so good. What do you think? How good of a job do you think you're doing? How good of a job am I doing? Make it a 360-degree review if you want. Build a training plan. Where would you like to grow your skills? But have a formal, documented training plan. Super important. And then once a year, connect pay raises to it. Right? That base pay formula I gave you, apply a cost of living increase based on whatever governmental organization you want to use says their cost of living increase is. Apply the cost of living increase, the COLA, to the base pay. And then any performance incentive, any performance bonus, because they've done such a great job and the evaluation shows that, apply that to the incentive piece. All right, so that's why for service advisors, I use the gross profit and the revenue as a percentage, because we can add 0.00001 to that, and it's still a bonus, but we have total control over those pay raises. And we're not just throwing out round numbers. Oh, I'm going to give him another $2 an hour. I heard that one last night. I just gave him another $2 an hour. Why did you do that? Oh, I felt he deserved it. Really? Let's make this a formal process. And those shops that are doing this will tell you that if we hire right, and we get better interviewing as part of hiring right, we pay attention to pay plans, and we structure it like this, and then we have regular communication so nobody's getting upset all the time, and then we do this regular cadence of employee reviews where they know they're going to get a pay increase, everybody gets the cost of living no matter what, they will walk out of your office smiling. And that will help build a structure internally in your organization that will stand on its own. And then as you grow and as you think about scaling, you've got management. You've got to have managers, and then you as an individual have to become a different type of leader. Because now you're not working the service counter. You shouldn't be now, by the way. And you're not working in the shop. You shouldn't be now, by the way. But you are managing your managers because you've got more important things to do. You've got higher level discussions that go on because listen, as an owner, your number one job is car count. That's your number one job, ensure car count for your store or stores. Your number two job is ensure quality employees for your store or stores. Now, if you're big, you're 10, 15, 20, 100 stores, you've got people that do that for you. But your role changes, folks. And so as you have managers, you've got to make sure they're getting management and leadership training. As they're getting management and leadership training, you need your own management and leadership training or coaching. That's where the coaches come in, right? Because it's another set of eyes, it's another opinion, it's an unbiased opinion most of the time. It's somebody you can bounce ideas off of. It matters. All right? So if you employ these things, you're on your way to this very growth strategy. Always be hiring, develop great pay plans you can have conversations around, run scenarios with, engage in those weekly or daily meetings, and then execute on those employee reviews. If you can do these 4 things with consistency, you're growing. And you've got something that you can duplicate in your next organization, at your bigger facility, or at your other shop, wherever it is. Okay? Now remember, one of the last things I asked though was, can your structure right now scale? Now, if you do all of this, I'm saying yes, it can. But let's go a little bit deeper with this one. What do I mean by shop structure, number one? And really what I'm talking about is the systems and processes that organize your shop. You'll hear me say organization all the time. And a client called me up a while back and he says, you know what, I just had an epiphany. He's having a lot of epiphanies. He says, I had an epiphany, Greg. And I used to think that you calling my shop an organization was a fancy word for my shop. And then I realized that's not what you meant. You see, he lost some technicians and he lost a service advisor, and chaos ensued. And he said, I realized that the shop is organized of people and roles that perform specific jobs. And I would take it one step further. What those roles are, how those roles interact, and the structure within which we operate in those roles really matters. So how do we organize our service advisors and technicians? Well, what the heck do you mean by that, Greg? Well, look, if you want to make it simple, what about dispatch process? Well, yeah, we just pass out the repair orders. All right, so if you have 6 technicians and 2 service advisors, how do you determine who gets what? Oh, we just figure it out. Now, I see this all the time. So if I'm passing work out and you're passing work out, and we both have the same favorite technician because they're our go-to guy, how is this going to work well? It's not going to, because that favorite technician's getting work from 2 different people, and they're going, well, which one has priority? And don't let them say, I got 2 bays, I'll pull them both in, right? We already know that doesn't work. But do we have a structure for this? Maybe we should consider a team system where we have 1 service advisor and 3 technicians in this scenario, 1 service advisor and 2 technicians. The shops that have implemented this recently in my world have called me up and they've gone, wow, I can see where the deficiencies are way better than I ever could before. Yeah, because now you created lanes, right? So everybody's in their lane. So really super important things like that matter. Scheduling matters. What is our scheduling philosophy? Do you use that total billable hours divided by the hours per repair order so we know exactly how many cars a day? No, Greg, we schedule by billable hours per technician. That's great, but you know what happens there? When I get busy, the phones are ringing, the boss is tugging on my sleeve, technicians want something from me, what do? I revert to looking for white space on the schedule. Whereas if you told me, Greg, we need 12 cars a day, 3 cars per technician, we need 12 cars a day, I can look and go, oh, we're at 9, yeah, bring it on in. It makes the service counter feel better, all right? But if we use a process and we help everybody understand our philosophy around that process, that makes a difference. Quality control. Folks, don't scale unless you have a formal quality control program that is consistent. Don't scale, especially not today with social media, where one disgruntled customer can burn the whole thing down. Don't do it. Don't scale. Don't buy another shop or go to a bigger shop unless you have a great DVI program. Okay? That's what I mean by structure. If you have that structure, then we can most of the time duplicate it, right? Do we have this bullet point in here is for if we're going to buy a second shop to scale. Is there anybody at the existing shop that I can move over to that other shop that's going to carry with us the structure, the processes, the formal format that we use, that if you have structure in your existing shop, there's sometimes somebody that's willing to go there. The gentleman I talked to this morning, the owner's buying a second shop, and I talked to the potential manager. He's actually a technician that's willing to move 2 hours away with his family to become manager of that shop. It's a crazy situation, but I'm like, yeah, dude, he's your guy. All right, but do we have that? And I want, before you buy, sell, or otherwise scale, I want your processes, not every one of them. I don't need to tell the technician how to test every battery. All right, and yes, I see that kind of detail out of documented processes sometimes. I want your core processes documented. It's super important to document those core processes. Now, your financials. Your financials matter before you decide you're going to scale. You can't scale. You shouldn't scale. You probably could, but it'll hurt. You shouldn't scale unless your financials are in order. What should your overall gross profit be? Unloaded, 65%. Overall gross profit, 65%. Your labor, hey, shout out to our Canadian friends. Notice how I spelled labor. All right, and shout out to our American friends. I spelled it the other way down here. See, I work in both countries too, so I try to be nice here. Overall gross profit, 65%. Labor gross profit, somewhere between what I see right now today, 68 and 76%. I like those low 70s. I like 70, 72%. If you can get higher, that's great. Not everywhere can you get higher. Cost of technicians is going up, although I'm starting to see it pull back a little bit. So overall gross profit unloaded, 65%. Labor gross profit, somewhere in the low 70s. Parts gross profit. This is where my friend Bill Haas and I will disagree. I want your parts gross profit at 55 to 60%, somewhere in that range. Bill wants it 65 to 70%. Now, I'm not saying that to pick on him. Look, if you get it at 70%, you go and make sure you let Bill know. But I work with a lot of clients that are like 38, 40, 42%. 70% might as well be a different planet. And so I want 55 to 60% parts gross profit. If you're already at 55, then work on getting to 60. All right, if you think your market can take that. Your effective labor rate, super important. Effective labor rate, simple calculation. I didn't put it on here for you. Simple calculation. How many labor dollars divided by build hours? That's all it is. Labor dollars divided by build hours. That's any formula. In the AutoLeap system, any other system on the planet. Simple formula. You can do the math yourself. Your effective labor rate should never be less than 90% of your posted labor rate. Now, here's the trouble we get into. Posted labor rate should be an average of your diagnostic rate, your European rate, your regular rate, your whatever rate. Some of you have like 16 different rates. Average those, and your effective labor rate should be within 90% of that. All right? And then hours per RO, where are you there? Look, if you're a tire shop, you're going to be 1.2. I want you as a tire shop to be right around 1.6 or 1.7. If you're general repair, the North American average right now is 2.6. If you're European, you should be closer to 3. All right? I got one European shop at 3.2. So you've got to make sure that before you grow, before you scale, make sure your numbers make sense, folks. All right? Really important. So for this piece, we're talking about structure, and I threw some financials in there, but your growth strategy around this piece really should be to have a formal scheduling philosophy that you can explain to everybody so that everybody understands why you're asking for 12 cars, 9 cars, 14 and a half cars, whatever it is. And if you want to use hours per technician, that's fine. There is a place for that. I'm not going to pick on you for doing so. But have a scheduling philosophy that everybody can explain to me when I come walking through your door. Have a quality control process. Super important, okay? Have it documented and make sure it's consistent. All of your processes should be documented, right? Your inspection program has to be consistent every vehicle, every time. Introduce it and train on it every year. And then look, if you're 4 technicians or more, you have two service advisors or more, consider a team dispatch system. All right. So, folks, I want to, we've got about 6 minutes to go here. And I just want to check in with Dua real quick and see if we have any questions, because this is a great stopping point with 5 minutes to go. And otherwise, I'll keep talking. Dua, do we have any questions out there?
No, Greg, everything's all clear, so no questions.
Are there people in the room?
There definitely are, but you're doing a
Don't
great
answer
job
that.
explaining it.
Okay, so nobody's got any questions. Look, I'm going to go through the next few slides here. So if you got questions, get them in, and Dua, feel free to jump in and yell at me and say, hey, hold on, Greg, we got questions, okay? All right, awesome. So this is just a kind of a summary of your strategies depending on where you're at right now, and some cautions. And I'm going to start with filling your shop, because we want to make sure that you're full up, right? I think I've already made this case. So your strategy here is going to be to calculate your production capacity, service capacity, billable hour capacity, whatever number you want that to be called. And then you're always going to be hiring, because once you calculate that capacity, you're going to realize you're not there. And so you're going to want to start hiring. Now, the first thing that comes up with always be hiring is, but Greg, what if my people see my ads? I don't care. Because the thing that I say to them is, you want to work with the best people out there, right? Well, yeah, they'll never tell you no. You say, well, yeah. And I say, okay, for me to find the best people out there, I need to be looking for them all the time, because I can't just rely on them looking for us while we're looking for them. So I'm searching the world for the best people out there, okay? In worst case, if it puts a little pressure on them to do a better job, great, who cares? You're also going to add to your strategy to fill the shop communication, the shop meetings. All right, remember those 3 rules: short, agenda, consistent. If you need agenda for 52 weeks, let me know. I'll get you that. Okay, I have one. And then get your employee review process implemented. Important. You need help with that? Reach out to me. I'll get that to you. Now, once your shop's maxed out and we can't do any more there, now we're going to look at building capacity. We're going to look at maybe renovation. And this is not my first choice, folks. It just isn't, because it's very disruptive. It always takes longer than you think it's going to. And every shop owner, with no exceptions that I've ever talked to that's done this, they're like, you know what? I can't, I never would do that again. So think long and hard about this, because it can be really, really disruptive. And sometimes, because of your lot size, you can't scale your parking. So all of a sudden you have more production capacity and no place to put cars. So renovation isn't my favorite. I will consider a new building, because if I buy a building and I'm in a lease situation now, then that's a really viable exit strategy. And I like that as a reason for you to scale or grow, right? Ego, we don't do. Exit strategy, we definitely do. Dreams, I'm good with dreams. I'm all about dreams, all right? This is an opportunity to push the giant reset button too. So I do like purchasing a new building. And what I mean by reset button is, you can use that new building as an excuse, a reason to put new processes in, to hire new people, to do all kinds of change implementation. So I think this is a viable strategy, but I want all those processes in place and everybody used to maximizing production capacity before we go and do it. Really super important. And then lastly, maybe I'm going to buy another building, or another business, I should say. Before you do this, do not do this for ego reasons. I think we've established that. Before you do this, your first business must absolutely be standing on its own. Even if you're going to sell your shop, folks, they will not buy your shop unless that business is standing on its own. I looked at a shop for me to buy recently, and the one reason I wasn't going to buy it was it could not stand on its own. The owner was way too involved. Okay? It's got to be able to stand on its own. That means processes. That means quality control processes for customer satisfaction purposes, and you're going to have a manager. So there's a lot of due diligence involved in finding another business. You've got to think a lot about it. You've got to do all the math on the production capacity. You've got to look at how you're going to staff it and what its potential truly is. Okay? Do we have any questions now? Because we have like 30 seconds left.
Nope, nothing yet.
Nobody has any questions. I am so heartbroken. All right, folks, I think you've probably received the message at this point that before you grow, you have got a little bit of homework to do. You have got to make sure processes are implemented, documented, and things are consistent. And that is just outside of your financials. Okay? So I wish all of you the best of luck. I hope you all take one thing out of every class that you attend today. And I'd like to thank AutoLeap especially for putting this whole thing on. So do a thank you so much to you and the rest of AutoLeap.
Thank you so much, Greg. That was an amazing session. And for all of you who don't know, Greg's company Shop Pros is a gold sponsor here. So you can even check them out at the exhibit hall. They have an amazing booth set up there. And in 10 minutes, we're going to be starting a fireside chat with the former CEO of General Motors, Rick Wagner. So definitely stay tuned, hop on in another 5 minutes. I would say spend those 5 minutes checking out Greg's booth and then come back to the auditorium and join Rick's session. I'll see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you.